Almost everything around us is a resource which we can use to live a better life in terms of comfort and prosperity. Look around your house. It's full of resources. The furniture, the fan, even a spoon is a resource made from other resources like wood and metal. And all resources can be classified on the basis of their ownership. Your home and everything inside are owned by an individual, you. What about the people living in the villages? What do they own? Their individual resources are farms, plantations, cattle, and perhaps wells. Resources can also be owned by a community. The park that you go to play in is not owned by you, but you can go to the park whenever you wish. Other community-owned resources are picnic spots, playgrounds, while in rural areas, community resources may be grazing grounds for cattle and village ponds. And all of these things belong to the nation. So each and everything within the boundary of a nation is owned by the government of the nation and is called a national resource. This authorizes governments to take away private land, but only for the greater good of building things like canals, railways, and airports. All the minerals, water resources, forests, wildlife, land within its political boundaries belongs to the nation. And for any nation, the political boundary ends at 12 nautical miles from the coast. This is 22.2 kilometers. But even beyond this political boundary, up to 370 kilometers or 200 nautical miles, the resources belong to the nation, and this region is called the exclusive economic zone. Beyond this distance, the resources are classified as international resource. Also, anything in space is an international resource. Development of international resources is governed by an international body. Interestingly, India has got the right to mine manganese nodules from the bed of the Indian Ocean from an area which lies beyond the exclusive economic zone of India. So, are there any other ways of classifying resources? Yes, there are. We can classify resources in terms of stages of development. To understand this, first, let's have some fun. Imagine that 10 years from now, you open a company in India, which is the next Google. You will be a billionaire. Maybe family friends with the Ambanis. Can you picture yourself in that jet-set life? Wait, you don't have the money yet. You may potentially have it in the future. And the same story with resources. The resource is classified as a potential resource if there is a possibility that we can exploit it in the future. For example, in the western parts of India, like Rajasthan and Gujarat, there is a huge potential for wind and solar energy. But so far, these have not been developed, and therefore they are classified as potential resources. We also have developed resources. Here, the quality and the quantity of the resource is already known. For example, we know that offshore regions of Mumbai contain huge reserves of oil. This is a developed resource. Besides potential and developed resources, there is a third category of resource called stock. Let's see this in detail. I bet you have heard of the equation E is equal to mc square. This famous equation tells us that we can convert mass into energy. So a glass of water can be converted into lots of energy, but we don't have the technology to do it yet. Such resources which are there in our environment, but the technology to use them does not yet exist, are called stock. Finally, we have reserves, which are really a subset of stock. So here we do have the technology, but we simply have not used it yet. For example, we can build hydroelectric power plants across all rivers of India, but we have not done that as yet. There was this grasshopper and an ant. You've heard the story before. During the summer, the grasshopper would eat all he could, but the ant would store food, doing hard work. When the winter came, the food supply was finished, the grasshopper had nothing to eat, and the ant had built the supply of resources to last through winter. This story, told to kids, has a very powerful message. Resources which are limited cannot be taken for granted. We can be like the ant and survive, or we can be like the grasshopper and perish. Let me tell you another story, a real one this time.
This story is about John Rockefeller, a small town middle class American boy who grew up to be the richest man in the world. He founded a company called Standard Oil. This was the largest oil company in the world in the late 1800s. Since they did not realize or did not wish to realize that crude oil is a limited commodity, they used it so much that we will run out of oil in the next 50 years. If we use the limited resources indiscriminately, then we will deplete the resources to satisfy the greed of a few individuals. Rockefeller's worth, by the way, in today's money would be $400 billion. Bill Gates is at $80 billion.
Many people like Rockefeller cropped up. They created large corporations which took control of the limited resources. This accumulation of resources divided our society into the rich and the poor, the haves and the have-nots. So these are the major problems that have arisen due to indiscriminate usage of resources. Another problem is that of environmental damage caused by this. Let's understand this. Have you ever stood outside on a cold winter's day? The rays of the sun travels millions of miles and hit our skin.
Some rays are reflected, that's why you can see me. And some rays are absorbed by the skin, therefore we feel the warmth. However, there are some rays which reflect in a weird way. When they reflect, they are not the same ones that came in. Their wavelengths have become larger. These are infrared rays. Now the thing is, our atmosphere allows the passage of rays with a small wavelength but does not allow full passage of rays with large wavelengths. This is weird, I know. This is because of the gas called carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. As you can imagine, this heats up the atmosphere. This is what we call the greenhouse effect. When vehicles are driven and when factories operate burning fossil fuels, they produce chemicals as waste products, chief among them carbon dioxide. This will make the earth hotter. Climate will change, and this change may be very dangerous. With melting polar ice caps, sea levels will rise. Areas which are fertile today may become deserts. There are other rays which do not reach us at all. These are called the UV rays, and they are harmful to us. They are stopped by a layer of the atmosphere called the ozone layer.
Some other chemicals released by us actually depletes the ozone layer. Imagine humans trying to destroy the natural shield without which we will all die. Indiscriminate exploitation of resources has therefore led to an ecological global crisis such as global warming, ozone layer depletion, environmental pollution, and land degradation. So the resource of fossil fuels must be used in a planned and sustainable manner. What do we mean by sustainable? Sustainable economic development means development which happens without damaging the environment, and it should happen such that it does not compromise with the needs of the future generations.
In June 1992, more than 100 heads of state gathered in Rio de Janeiro, the capital of Brazil, for the first International Earth Summit. The assembled leaders signed a document called the Declaration on Global Climatic Change and Biological Diversity.
Apart from agreeing to and endorsing the Global Forest Principles, they also signed something called Agenda 21. Sounds nice. But what is Agenda 21?
It is an agenda to combat environmental damage, poverty and disease. How do countries do that? Well, they have various schemes and programs running within the country, but Agenda 21 sought to take this to the next level by saying that let's tackle these problems through global cooperation.
So Agenda 21 would create global cooperation through shared interests, mutual needs, and shared responsibilities. The heads of all the governments wanted this sustainable development to go down to the lowest level of villages and towns. So they said that every local government should have its own Agenda 21.